Bombshell precautionary measures exclusively reveals another illness that Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez has suffered from. Let's get started. Hello everyone and welcome to a new edition of Precautionary Measures. First of all, thank you to all of you, to the more than 100,000 people who watched the video we published yesterday about that first exclusive on the illnesses of the President of the Government of Spain, Pedro Sánchez. And pay close attention because in today's video we are going to reveal another illness that he has recently suffered from. The Prime Minister. We are going to reveal it here exclusively on Medidas Cautelares. And I'm also going to take advantage of today's video to, if you'll allow me, with all due discretion, settle some scores. Settle scores with the media for their behavior in the last few hours, for better but also for worse, regarding the information we have revealed. Revealed exclusively on Medidas Cautelares, on Libertad Digital, and on the program El Radio about that cardiovascular condition suffered by the President of the government, Pedro Sánchez. Honestly, the behavior of some media outlets has been regrettable. It has left a lot to be desired. There has been a bit of everything for better or worse, and we're going to analyze it. Because later I'm going to tell you, of course, about that second illness that Spain's Prime Minister has suffered. When they come to accuse me of falsehoods and say that this is a lie and hoaxes, well, it's like the gutter. This news outlet about Pedro Sánchez, which is called El Plural. The one that said Judge Peinado was a secret agent and had 2 IDs. Well, those are the ones who say my information is fake news. It's laughable, isn't it? But we're not just going to settle scores with El Plural, we're going to settle scores with many other media outlets that I honestly consider friendly, aligned, supposedly independent media outlets. Critical of the government, and yet either they haven't supported us, or they've left us hanging, or they've looked the other way, or worse, even more seriously, they've sided with Pedro Sánchez and La Moncloa. So I think today's video is special because, first of all, as I said, I want to thank all of you for your messages of encouragement and support during these hours on this day we've been through. As you can understand, releasing such delicate and sensitive information that affects the Prime Minister is not easy. You feel a lot of pressure from many people, from those in power. You feel singled out. You feel like you're targeted by someone like the Prime Minister, Pedro Sánchez. And honestly, I've had to listen to all kinds of nonsense, all sorts of ridiculous things, and I think that's why we need to set the record straight before I tell you the second part of the exclusive that we're going to reveal here, only here, on Medidas Cautelares. There have been some media outlets that, out of pettiness, jealousy, envy, distrust, because it seems like there are first-class and second-class media outlets and YouTube channels here, have not wanted to share the information. They haven't disclosed that Pedro Sánchez has a cardiovascular condition, not even by citing the outlet. I can understand that some people get nervous talking about certain topics when they're not the ones bringing them up, but that's what citing the source is for. You cite the source. And if there's any legal or judicial issue or whatever, well, you've just shared information that was published by that source, right? So here, well, I'm going to include them in this little group. First, media outlets that are supposedly close, friendly, and aligned, who didn't want to reveal the information, from Medidas Cautelares, from Libertad Digital and Radio. We come across the newspaper El Mundo, we come across the newspaper El Confidencial, we come across El Debate, we come across The Objective, we come across El Español. Maybe, okay. These are media outlets directly for them. La información no ha existido. Pedro Sánchez padece una dolencia cardiovascular, la publica otro medio, y we want to give a voice, but we don't believe it because we are the elite of the media. Libertad Digital, Medidas Cautelares, and El Radio are second division, so we don't believe what they publish, and since it's not our news, we don't mention it. This is journalism today. These are the media outlets. Honestly, I've been fighting my own battle trying to convince my bosses not to mention anyone because they don't deserve it. They just don't deserve it. It's really narrow-minded not to want to mention anyone like they do, except when it's their own exclusives and their own news. But personally, I'm tired of it. So honestly, if they never mention us, then I don't mention them. I don't mention them. Why should I? Because there aren't first class and second class media here. There are first rate and second rate stories, or first class and second class journalists. Okay? So here, having some so-called media who think they're the elite and look down on the rest of us, I don't like it. I don't like it. So if they never mention our news, then I'm not going to mention theirs either, because I'm tired of turning the other cheek. That's the first big group. Then we found another group, which was the expected one, right? Well, the sycophantic media, well, Pedro Sánchez's propaganda rag, not just the government of Pedro Sánchez, but the PSOE, which is El Plural. Well, the credibility of El Plural. You just have to talk to some colleagues from other left-wing media outlets who say it's awful. I get along very well with people from El Plural, and one doesn't cancel out the other. But even in left-wing media, leftist or pro-government outlets, whatever you want to call them, El Plural is totally discredited. Because what they do is directly publish the talking points given to them by the Socialist Party, right? I mean, it's a completely discredited outlet. When I published that Pedro Sánchez was suffering from a cardiovascular condition the day before I called La Moncloa, I spoke with the Secretary of State for Communication, a member of the State Secretariat for Communication, who didn't want to give me his name. He asked me, "What's your name?" Someone from the State Secretariat for Communication? I said yes, but asked for their name. He said Miguel. Then I did some digging, and apparently it's someone named Miguel Angel Marful, or Marful, or Marfuls, or something like that, who works there in Moncloa. Honestly, this person showed very little professionalism, very little courtesy toward me, using sarcasm and irony. When I told him that Pedro Sánchez he didn't know how to handle the confirmed news that he had a cardiovascular condition and we would publish it. He didn't want to confirm or deny it. He was kind of messing with me, and I had to tell him, look, I'm not here to debate or argue with anyone. If you want to give me your version of events, I'll include it in the story. I'm just doing my job. If you don't want to give me anything or say anything, then I'll just say that you don't want to provide any information. And that's that, but I'm not here to waste my time or to put up with anyone's sneers, irony, or sarcasm, especially from someone whose salary I'm paying. And I'm not going to waste my time either, because if not, he'll be out on the street, okay? We need to make that clear so we understand everyone's actions, right? They refuse to confirm or deny the information. And in the report I published on Medidas Cautelares and Libertad Digital, I included that Moncloa did not want to deny this information. Then the next day, the sycophantic media, Sanchez's media sewer, which is El Plural, comes out and says that Moncloa denies the information, okay? That we published in Libertad Digital and in Medidas Cautelares. The exact quote is as forceful as an obviously not, as if saying obviously not. It's true that Pedro Sánchez suffers from that heart condition, that cardiovascular ailment, whose specific pathology I know, but we can't publish, because that would invade the privacy of the Prime Minister. There's no need to say exactly what he has, just saying that he has a cardiovascular condition and that he has been treated for many months, maybe more than a year, at the Ramón y Cajal Hospital in Madrid. I think that's more than enough. There's no need to be so specific, because then we could be getting into his private life, right? Into the exact diagnosis of the Prime Minister. There's no need to go there. But the sycophantic outlet El Plural, which is the one that says Judge Peinado has 2 national ID cards, that he's a secret agent of, I don't know if it's the CIA or the FBI. Those are the ones who say that we're spreading fake news and all that, right? That's expected. What else would you expect from Sanchez's media sewer? Of course they'll deny it, even though they know it's true. They have to do their job. That surprised me, in a bad way. 2 other media outlets that I consider friends and close to me, which are Voz Popular and La Razón. Because Voz Popular and La Razón, I consider them independent media, also independent from the government. Of course, I have great friends in those media outlets. And yet, they didn't publish our information, but instead published Moncloa's denial of our information. That is on the same side as El Plural, Moncloa, and Pedro Sánchez. I was disappointed, because if you don't want to share our information, then don't, just like the first group. No, but to align yourself with El Plural and with Pedro Sánchez and Moncloa, Voz Popular, and La Razón. I didn't expect it, and personally, since I have great friends and colleagues in those 2 outlets, I was disappointed. This is the media landscape compared to these outlets. then obviously from others you don't expect anything, for better or worse, and I'm not even going to mention them. In contrast to this, there were people who did step up, who were up to the task, and of course, starting with my bosses at Radio Libertad Digital. Los Santos, Carlos Cuesta, and others did step up and were on the front lines. And also, honestly, for me, it was a great satisfaction that a giant, a true legend in the history of journalism like Carlos Herrera on COPE also gave full credibility to the information and shared it on air. Antonio Naranjo from Telemadrid also reported this information. The colleagues from Es Diario, the colleagues from Periodista Digital, Carlos Ten, Albert Castillon's YouTube channel, Castillon Confidencial. I also know that my friends from B1 with Jano Garcia also mentioned the report. In other words, this is the media landscape we have in Spain. At times it's regrettable, at times it's shameful. And in the end, it explains why we've had to endure a prime minister like Pedro Sánchez for so many years, precisely because of these quarrels, these envies, these jealousies, this pettiness, this meanness, this distrust among colleagues. Anyway, but this is how things are, this is what we have, and this is the situation. I also would have expected a bit more, how should I say, courage from the opposition parties, because correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't seen anyone from the PP or Vox publicly addressing this issue. I'm aware the Popular Party had an internal debate that lent credibility to the story, but they avoided involvement, claiming it concerned the Prime Minister's private life. Incredible. I haven't heard from Vox or received any reference. Please, those watching this video. Is there any leader from the Popular Party or Vox who has made a statement about the information we've published in Libertad Digital? Let me know about any precautionary measures regarding Pedro Sánchez. Honestly, I've been busy non-stop for 24 hours and haven't seen anything. But honestly, I would have appreciated more strength, more support, and more courage from the opposition. Because if we want to put an end to Pedro Sánchez for the good of all Spaniards, well, when we are giving truthful information in which it is being questioned whether a person like the Prime Minister of Spain, whom we pay with our taxes and who governs us and carries out such a difficult task as running a country, he is fully physically and mentally fit to carry out his duties. And instead of contributing to fueling that debate and having Pedro Sánchez give explanations about his physical condition, just as so many other prime ministers and so many political leaders have done. Esperanza Aguirre, for example, resigned as president of the Community of Madrid during a press conference where she announced she had cancer. With Pedro Sánchez, it's all cover-ups, secrecy, darkness, and lies. So of course it has to be just a few brave journalists who have to put this information on the table, in the face of the indifference, jealousy, and pettiness of some colleagues. And then when the opposition parties don't help us either, it's very discouraging. And in the end, you say, I'm crying out in the wilderness, I'm facing Pedro Sánchez all by myself. What is this, right? Where is the PP? Where is Vox? Where is the opposition? Where are the media outlets that are critical of the government? Because you can't expect anything from the others. What can you expect from El Diario.es, from El País? You can't expect anything. But from other media outlets I consider friendly, critical, and independent, you expect something different. It must be said that OK Diario was also one of the media outlets that did report the news, thanks to Eduardo Inda's digital newspaper, where I worked a few years ago, for also reporting the news and taking that step forward and standing up for this information. But then I also had to listen to and read in some media outlets, or rather on some social networks, some comments saying that this information was just a smokescreen, and that Pedro Sánchez didn't deserve any sympathy. Come on, you haven't understood anything. What do you mean it's a smokescreen and that Pedro Sánchez doesn't deserve any sympathy? Do you really think I brought out this information, which Pedro Sánchez definitely didn't find funny at all, so that Pedro Sánchez would get sympathy? I'll leave that question there because honestly, sometimes I can't believe it. And for others to say that this information, which has put me directly in the spotlight with the Prime Minister, is a smokescreen, mine? Una cortina de humo mía? People are really out of their minds, huh? Some people just aren't right in the head. But anyway, this is the personal reckoning I wanted to make over what has happened in these last 24 hours. And now here's the information, now here's the exclusive story. Sorry if I took too long, but it had to be done. It was necessary to settle these scores, to know where we stand, what media outlets we have, and what political parties exist in Spain. Because that's how we find out who is leading the government, Pedro Sánchez, and whose fault this is, right? So let's get to the exclusive information. Yesterday, I published medidas cautelares in Libertad Digital and discussed them on El Radio, Telemadrid, Es Diario, Periodista Digital, and every media outlet that gave me a voice. That Pedro Sánchez has been suffering from a cardiovascular condition for many months, that he is being treated at the Ramon y Cajal Hospital, and that he has been seen by one of the best cardiology specialists, not only in Spain, but in Europe, Dr. Zamorano, who would enter the hospital through the kitchen dock, so he wouldn't be seen on days like Sunday. And now it's at odd hours, like at 7 in the morning, so he won't be seen by anyone. He also said that this cardiovascular condition, if not treated or controlled, could lead to complications like thrombosis or a heart attack. He also said Pedro Sánchez is a real hypochondriac and obsessed with his health, so much so that when he arrived at Moncloa, he took the Moncloa doctor for himself, having the doctor accompany him everywhere. This is the information I published yesterday. Well, the exclusive information we revealed in Medidas Cautelares is that the president of the government, Pedro Sánchez, has recently overcome another condition, another illness, which was a prostate lesion. A prostate lesion, according to highly reliable sources that I have been able to consult from Medidas Cautelares. Well, this condition, so to speak, I know exactly what it was, but just like with the cardiovascular issue, I can't give more details. In order not to invade the privacy of the president of the government, in that regard, yes, but for the rest, all Spaniards should know what the president of the government's health status is. Yes, we have the right. That prostate lesion, that prostatic lesion, was a big scare. It was a big scare for the president of the government. However, in the end, it was overcome satisfactorily, and he has already gotten over it. This is regarding the prostate lesion that we exclusively revealed on Medidas Cautelares. But obviously, the Prime Minister suffers from that cardiovascular condition, which is the one we revealed yesterday. And I'm also going to tell you something else, because I've been investigating this topic for about 3 months, talking to my sources, my contacts. I have the intuition, the suspicion, but I still can't verify it, and that's why I can't confirm it, I can't publish it. Let's say that Pedro Sánchez might have something else, something more, okay? So, to sum up, to recap, Pedro Sánchez recently overcame a prostate lesion, which was a big scare but turned out to be nothing. He has recovered from that issue satisfactorily, but he currently suffers from a cardiovascular condition for which he has been treated in recent months at the Ramon y Cajal Hospital in Madrid, which is the main hospital serving for the Congress of Deputies, the Senate, and Moncloa. And I suspect that he might have something else, something more. Algo más. I'm investigating it, and of course, when I have more information, I'll share it here on Medidas Cautelares. And to all those media outlets that want to give us a voice, who are brave, who aren't sycophants, who aren't jealous or envious, our doors are open to them, of course, and I've always been available to everyone. Some people aren't interested because they only care about selling their own news and exclusives, acting as if other outlets' stories don't matter. But well, everyone has to deal with what they do. Here, we'll keep telling the truth, we'll keep providing information. And do you think these attacks, these attempts to smear the story, to discredit from Moncloa, saying it's a lie, releasing a video of Pedro Sánchez in the snow as proof of I don't know what, because Pedro Sánchez being in the snow and saying he's going to ride a bike, I think that's fine, but that doesn't prove he doesn't have a cardiovascular condition. That doesn't mean anything. It's a denial, that's a joke, it's a laughable denial that doesn't mean anything. And I'm going to keep investigating, and of course you're going to have all the information, whether some people like it or not, and despite the indifference of others. But that's what this channel is for, and that's why you're there on the other side. And please, I don't want to forget the great support I've also received. That's all for this edition of Medidas Cautelares. You already know that you can become members like the chosen ones for less than €3 a month, or like the supreme ones for less than €7 a month, okay? Also, as I was saying, you can make your contributions via Bizum at 627-556-3706, 275-556-370. And if you allow me, of course, honestly, in the last few hours, I have received some very generous contributions, truly. I really appreciate your support a lot with your comments, everyone helping however they can. Honestly, it's very important to know you're there on the other side. When we are talking about very delicate topics, very important topics, and topics that some people don't dare, let's say, to talk about. Because they don't dare, because they want to look good for various reasons, right? But that's why I also wanted to dedicate today's show to all of you who have also wanted to make contributions through Bizum. And I have the data right here, right now. Joaquin, thank you so much. And also another user whom I'll mention in the next video for your generous contribution and for being there on the other side, okay? So that this community keeps going, so that we can keep sharing all the information that others don't want to share for whatever reason, but here you will have it. As I always say, sharing this information with everyone is key because information is power. See you soon.